Good evening and welcome to Law Talk, the show that brings the law, the Constitution, and the events of the day to you each month. Tonight, we're very fortunate to have James Barrett, Mark Malachowski, and a guest, Mike Hodas. Mark, can you tell us what we're covering tonight?
Well, tonight we are going to talk about a tragic incident, and we have Mike Hodas here, and he's going to talk about what happened to his wife, Lori. So you had an experience with a hospital that was caring for your wife. Why don't you give us a little background of why she was at the hospital and what happened?
Okay, let me start just a little bit about Lori. I think it helps. Lori was extremely active as a doing access for the disabled. She got MS, multiple sclerosis, and she got primary progressive, and she progressed to becoming paraplegic and quadriplegic. And when you have multiple sclerosis, it affects your nerves. And then she was having a hard time swallowing, and we brought her in. What happened is that we were feeding her through a feeding tube, and we were following the nutritionist's directions, and we probably overfed her because her stomach probably had shrunk. So she rejected her feeding. So we brought her in to get her deep suctioned, an emergency room deep suctioned her, and then they found out that her blood oxygen was below normal, and then they admitted her to the hospital.
Okay, so how long was she in the hospital?
That time, 1 week.
1 week, okay, and was that the last time when she was in the hospital?
That's correct.
Okay, now, during this week, was she starting to recover, or was she getting worse? What was her prognosis?
This is from the hospital report. The doctor's prognosis was that she wouldn't recover, although he didn't say she was futile, but he said she wouldn't recover. But if you look at the hospital report, you will see that her daily labs did show improvement every day. Till 5 hours before she died, she was absolutely normal. Her blood oxygen was normal. All of the formula was gone. And she had no sign of infection.
Okay, so now my understanding is the doctors and the hospital decided to give what they call comfort care. Can you explain what comfort care is?
Yeah, comfort care is a term that's used in hospice, meaning you sedate the patient, but don't sedate them beyond being awake. But the way hospitals are using it, they're using it as a euphemism for euthanasia. And what it involves, I've talked to many people who have already experienced this through their loved ones. What it involves is a three-step process. The first step is you withhold food, nutrition. In this case, even nutrition through her IV line. And then what you do is you stop her water, her hydration.
And they're being sedated. What are they being sedated with usually?
Well, at this point, she was she was being sedated with her own medication. But what happened on the 6th day, the doctor came in. I only spoke to him twice, but he came in for the second time, and he said to me, "Can I put her on a morphine drip for pain?" And I didn't understand the relationship between morphine and the respiratory system. Lori had a moderate respiratory problem, and it's counterindicated for people who have respiratory problems. That's not why he gave it to her.
Well, let me ask a question here. What kind of medication was she on prior to the doctor changing the medication to morphine?
He didn't change it. He just added it.
Oh, so he increased the amount of morphine that she was going to be taking in.
She was getting a little bit of morphine through a pump that she had implanted that went directly to her spine, but it was very small. She was taking Dilaudid regularly. Okay.
Was she doing that through intravenous as well?
No, she was doing that by pill.
Okay, so it was your wife's name was Lori, wasn't it?
That's correct.
And was Lori totally communicable, and you could sit there and talk to her and have a normal conversation, even though she was still suffering all of this pain?
Let me explain. Lori had a speech impediment, and we could understand her. It took a little time to understand her, and a little practice, but she was very vocal, and you could understand her. At one point, she said, "I want to go home," very clearly, but the nurses never made an attempt to understand her, so they said she was without speech. which was totally untrue.
And you had already informed them that she did have the speech impediment and that you just had to be a little more patient to understand what she was really saying. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and she was in the hospital, you said, at that point, at 5 days?
7.
7 days. Okay, what happened next, Mike?
After 7 days, she died.
Okay, now you mentioned futile care or futile care policy. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of debate in the medical community about futility. Judging somebody as being futile, it means that they have no chance of recovery. But
And did you feel that Lori was a futile case?
No, I did not.
And did the doctors tell you that she was a futile case?
He didn't even use that term in the hospital report.
Okay, now when we're talking about this comfort care, now were you aware of what the doctors were doing?
No, I was not. They stated in the hospital report not to share information with family or patient.
So you're talking about the care plan. They didn't want to share the care plan with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have a durable power of
Yes,
attorney
I did.
for medical?
Yes,
And
I
you had
did.
an advanced healthcare director as well.
Yes,
So
she
you were
did.
the agent plus.
I was the agent. Yes.
Did
that's
you
correct.
lodge that with the hospital at the time she was admitted?
They had a copy of that, and she also had a pulse, which on the bottom says, it gives you a choice between continuing to have food and water, and she checked continue.
So, okay, because what you've said a moment ago, it sounded like the hospital didn't continue. It sounded like they discontinued.
They discontinued.
Okay, now if you had known they were going to discontinue, what would you have done?
Well, at that point, one of the problems is I didn't really know what my rights were, either as an agent or a patient. There are specific rights for patients and agents, hospital rights, and I wasn't aware of them.
And what specific right would you have exercised had you
Well,
known?
the bottom line is you can move the patient from that hospital to another hospital that will treat them. And I didn't do the research to find out whether medical insurance would have paid for a different hospital, or I didn't think about doing
Did
that.
the people at the hospital inform you that you could move her to another hospital
No,
if you didn't
never
like
did. No.
what they were going to do?
No.
Did they ever make it clear to you that they were going to administer this comfort care and they were going to let her go?
I never heard the term comfort care before I read the hospital report.
Okay, but I'm just saying, did you get the sense that they were going to medicate her and withhold water to the point that she would die as part of a way of letting her go out in a painless way?
No, I did not. Let me give you a little bit of background. She had been in the hospital twice before, very recently, okay? So that makes 3 times. The first time, as I said, she had an implanted pump, which provided her with 2 medications, one for stiffness and a tiny bit of morphine. The pump expired, so she went in. It's an operation. You have to have it replaced. She went in to have it replaced, and the doctor put in a new model, but he didn't change the dosage in the pump. The old pump was giving more dosage than the new pump needed. And so the day she was home, she overdosed. So we took her to the hospital to get her, they gave her Narcan, which snapped her out of it right away. And it was at that point that we decided to put the feeding tube in. But those 2 times, the hospitalist said to me, we should stop treating her. The first time, she said it rather passively. The second time, she was much more insistent. So I had a big argument with the hospitalist. That's where they knew that I was opposed to what they were doing, because I told them, no, I want her treated fully to the best of your ability.
Now, you had insurance coverage for this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and you paid your insurance on time
Absolutely.
and you were covered.
Absolutely.
Now, is there some kind of policy with hospitals if they have more than 3 people, or if you're over there a certain time? What is this,
You
a
hit
written
it.
policy or unwritten
Yes, it
policy?
is. You hit it. You
What
nailed it.
exactly, can you explain that in detail?
What it says is if a patient is admitted 3 times in 1 month, generally for the same reason, the Medicare will cut the reimbursement to hospitals.
Okay, now could you go twice to one hospital and once to another?
I don't know. I presume you could.
Okay, now is this cutting the Medicare just for that particular patient or for the whole hospital?
No, this is for that's for a particular patient.
Okay, so basically they might have been concerned that you were running out of money, or you were going to, some of their costs weren't going to be covered if they didn't let her go.
Perhaps that's the case.
Okay, did they ever make that clear to you?
No,
or
they did not.
what was that conversation where it got kind of testy between you and the
Well, she said to me, we want to stop treating her, and I think you should stop treating her.
And did you say, could you clarify? You mean to let her die? Did
That's
those
what I
words
said.
come? Okay.
And I said to her, and I said, no, I don't agree with you.
But you made it clear. You said, do you mean let her die when you
Yes.
say stop treating? You made that clear to her.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And then you said, I don't want to let her die. I want to continue to give her the treatment.
I want you to give her the treatment that will help her improve.
And now, were they understanding to that
No, they were not.
conversation, or did they kind of still oppose you, or
She-
they could just silence? What
At
was
that
their-
point, we got into a heated argument, and we just stopped it there.
And what happened in that heated argument?
Nothing. She was treated, and she went home and felt the same way she felt before. She was better.
Okay, so you made your, and now you said you saw some documentation there that said that they weren't going to share the information on the care with
That's
you.
correct. It's written right in the hospital report. Do we share care plan
with the family.
with the family? And it says no.
So that box is checked, and it was signed by someone at the
That's
hospital.
correct. That's
Okay, and now had you seen that before your wife passed away?
No, I had not.
So you didn't have any idea that they had this instruction. So is it your feeling that they hid their intent from you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that you made it clear to them that your intent was to continue treatment of your wife so she would not die unless she died of natural cause or whatever,
Exactly.
or there's nothing you could do.
Yes.
They made it clear that that wasn't their preference.
That's correct.
And then you're telling me that you believe in your heart that they hid this kind of secret plan to give her the comfort care and let her go.
Well, it's true. It's written right in the report. He started comfort care on the second day that she was in the hospital. He writes that in the report, saying, "I'm putting my wife on comfort care."
Right.
And so that's where I got that from.
Okay. And so, but you're saying they pulled the wool over your eyes. You didn't know what they were up to.
Absolutely. And that, as you know, that is against probate code, which says doctor must share care plan, prognosis, and treatment with the patient or the patient's agent on the first day that they are admitted.
Now, this is a very tough question, but putting yourself in your wife's shoes, would she want to continue to be treated and continue living?
Absolutely. I have a good example of that. When she last had a visit with her primary care physician strangely said, "Lori, you have interim MS." Mm-hmm. And I said to the doctor, "What is Lori supposed to do with that diagnosis?" And the doctor said, "Let me hear from Lori."
Right.
And Lori said as clearly as 10 years before, "I want to live."
Okay. So you personally felt that the hospital kept the secret from you, this plan, and as far as, you know, your heart of hearts, you believe that your wife wanted to continue to be treated and continue to be living.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask a question, Mike. And this is, once again, I know the subject is very sensitive, but I have to
go
ask
ahead.
this. Why did you leave your wife in the hospital knowing that the hospital has a different treatment plan than you would have gone with?
The reason I left her there is I wasn't sure what they were doing. I knew that they had stopped feeding her, but I did not realize that they had stopped providing her with water.
Okay. So what, you say you knew they stopped feeding her?
Because I asked the doctor on the first day, could she be fed intravenously? And he said no, because she will aspirate and it will cause pneumonia, which is not possible. If you're being fed intravenously, it's not going down through your throat, so
That's
you won't
correct.
aspirate. I didn't realize that was actually untrue.
So okay, but it still goes back to the question. You knew that they stopped feeding her,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And what day did you know that?
I knew that the first day she was there because I asked him and he said no,
Okay.
absolutely
and so
not.
At that point, didn't you feel that maybe something's going wrong in this treatment as early as the first or second day?
No, I did not. I always felt that they were actually doing what they could to help her. That happens to a lot of people. They don't really believe that the hospital would do something like this. So I was, first of all, as I said, I wasn't knowledgeable in the rules, and I just never thought that they were actually going to do it. And so.
Okay, was your thought at that time that they would stop feeding her for a few days, and as soon as they could feed her, they'd feed her again?
I would hope so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was your understanding.
But by the sixth day, I realized that this was not in her interest. So I started discussions with the case manager about moving her out. I wanted to take her home under hospice. That's the only thing I could think of. And she would have some breathing help, a breathing mask, if she needed it. And I wanted to get her out of the hospital. But it was a holiday that weekend, and hospice wasn't available at home until Monday, and she died on Sunday.
Okay, so you made it clear to the hospital that you wanted to move her, and there was some delay on that. But you really, when did the alarm bells kind of go off in your head that there was something terribly wrong here?
It was probably the fifth or sixth day.
Okay. And then you, fairly soon after that, you went and talked to him and said you wanted to move her.
Yeah, I said to them, we want to move her home. And they said, okay, we'll try and help you with that.
Right.
But they killed her before they were able to get her home.
And you think this might be part of a policy where if someone's in a hospital 3 times in 1 month, they're worried about losing funding?
I'm not sure whether that rule was available at that time. Okay, I think it's a new rule, but we have enough. I've talked to enough people whose loved one went through exactly the same treatment, and they knew it was called comfort care because the doctor told them. So we have evidence that this is being done. There's also a really great report out there called the Kaiser Report, and this woman wrote this report about Kaiser, and it appears that Kaiser euthanizes a lot of people. So this is coming from her report, the Kaiser Report. So this is something we are now aware of, but I wasn't aware of this before.
Mike, did you ask the hospital to start feeding your wife again?
No, I did not.
What held you back for that? Because it seems pretty clear that you recognized early on that this was part of a mistreatment program that your wife was going through by the doctors and the hospital.
I'm not sure I really realized that early on, okay? It wasn't until much later that it became apparent to me that this was not going well.
And hadn't the doctor kind of misled you when he said that he couldn't feed her because she might regurgitate or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so were you kind of in shock at this time? How were you feeling mentally? Were you pretty up on things, or you're so distraught?
Well, let me explain this. I also had back surgery 2 weeks before, serious back surgery. 2/3 of my spine was opened. They had put me on OxyContin. And I was still taking a very high dosage of OxyContin. And I think that dulled a lot of my instincts to respond.
Okay, that's what actually that answers a lot of questions in my mind, because as I sit here with you tonight, you're very astute and you're very clear about what went on. And what I didn't understand when you were answering these questions about the lack of feeding and the care that the doctors were telling you about, the comfort care and such, why that wouldn't automatically cause red flags to go up.
When the red flag really went up is after he had asked me about the morphine, and I agreed. After he left the room, he removed her breathing mask without asking me. And that's when
After you left the room?
After the doctor left the room.
Who removed the breathing mask?
The nurse did.
The nurse did. And that was
So
on instructions from the doctor?
That was, I went to the head nurse. I was really upset.
So did you see this?
Well, I was right there. She had a breathing mask, and they took it away.
And they took it away, and so you
I
went
was
and
there when
complained
they
about
took it away, and so I went and complained pretty strongly. And the head nurse said to me, "We're following orders. Call the doctor." I called the doctor that day 6 times, and he never returned my call. I never saw him again. And the whole thing was that it appears from the hospital report that he came for his rounds at 6 o'clock in the morning, and this is my assumption now, that he was trying to avoid me.
So you're saying you made it quite clear to the nurse that you wanted the breathing mask back on.
And she told me to call the doctor.
And they refused to put the mask back on.
Absolutely. So without doctor's orders, we can't put the mask back on.
Okay. So did you go to the authorities? Did you talk to the police or the district attorney's office about this? What happened when you did that?
About a week or so after, I went to the police, and they assigned a very nice policewoman to me. She said, I will take the report home. I gave her a copy of the report. She said, I'll take it home and read it.
Exactly what report are we talking
The
about?
hospital report for that last inpatient. So I gave her that whole report, okay? And she said, I'll take it home. And then she told me afterwards that I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning reading this report, and I was shocked by what I read. And I will fill out a murder report and send it to the district attorney's office.
Did you ever see that report?
No, I haven't gotten it yet. I just found out where I can actually get that report.
So you put in a request for that report?
Yes.
And can you give me a little more detail on exactly what she related that she had put in that report?
She just told me that she was shocked by what happened, and I'm filling out a murder report and I'm sending it to the DA's office.
So she said that she was recommending that the district attorney file charges?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And there's no doubt in your mind that's what she related to?
That's correct. I know it happened, actually.
But you know, this is pretty serious stuff. You're saying that the police officer looked at the hospital report and said that I'm going to recommend that the district attorney file murder charges on this case?
That's correct.
Did she tell you any elements from the doctor's report that would give her the basis to do this?
She didn't mention anything concretely.
Okay, I'm gonna play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because this is dramatic what you're describing right now. Because under those conditions of what happened to your wife, and a police officer reading a doctor's report and then coming to a conclusion that there's a potential charge for murder, that's taking on a very large scale of the medical profession, because hospitals on a daily basis, for whatever reason, people die. And in this case, you're saying that a procedure that obviously they have at this hospital called comfort care is actually leading to the death and could be murder.
Yes.
And when that accusation goes out, you are now talking about affecting an entire medical system, because do you have knowledge today that this comfort care is a commonality in hospitals for people that have similar conditions that your wife had?
Maybe not similar conditions, but I know comfort care is being used in hospitals because I've talked to I am now a referral from other groups for people whose loved one was used comfort care on and they died, and they would call me to ask what they can do.
When you say comfort care, do you believe this is a form of euthanasia?
Absolutely.
And you know the state of California has passed a law recently that euthanasia is now a choice.
That's not true.
Okay, well then...
Voluntary euthanasia.
Voluntary, not involuntary.
That's
I'm
what
not talking about involuntary. I'm talking
Correct.
about voluntary.
I think the technical term for what he's discussing would be called forced euthanasia.
Yeah, forced.
No, that's what it's called.
And that's why,
No, I
and then
think
in fact
legally
that
it
would
says
be
voluntary and
that would lead
involuntary.
to the legal charge of murder in the event.
Yes.
Now, how long ago did this happen?
3.5 years ago.
Then why haven't there been charges brought by the police department or the district attorney's office, and why don't you have a copy of the police report?
I just never got it. But let me explain to you what happened. About 3 weeks or a month went by, and I called the district attorney's office to find out what had happened. They referred me to the inspector who was assigned to the case. And I talked to the inspector, and the inspector said, I talked to the San Francisco medical examiner's office, and a man there told me to drop the case.
Wait a minute. Who told you to drop the case?
This is not me. He told...
No, I said who told you to...
No. The inspector talked to the medical examiner's office, and someone at the medical examiner's office told the inspector to drop the case.
Okay.
Yes. And then I said, can you give me the number of the person who told you that? He said, sure. He gave me the number, and I called him, and he was very rude to me on the phone. I can't even repeat what he said to me, but he did say, you have some nerve accusing a good doctor of what you did. And that was the end of it. And then basically he hung up the phone on me. So, and then I wrote 2 personal letters to the district attorney, and I never got a response, not even a form letter. So that appeared to me that avenue of help was not available.
Have you ever discussed this matter with any investigator with the San Francisco Police Department?
No, I have not, other than the investigator I talked to.
But how often did you talk to that investigator?
Just once.
Just once.
I called him. I was referred to him. He's the man that's been assigned this case, and he explained to me why the case is not going to be followed up on.
And why is exactly is because the medical coroner or
The medical examiner
indicated that there was nothing to look, nothing here.
He said, drop the case. That was the term that they used.
Okay, so you're saying the investigator for the San Francisco Police Department has no authority on his own volition to carry on a case when it was recommended for investigation and potential prosecution.
Struck me as rather strange, but that's what happened. That's what they told me what happened.
And then you tried to call the medical examiner, or you couldn't?
I
get that?
did. I called the medical examiner.
What did he say?
He said he was very rude to me on the phone. He used expletives, and he said, to boil it down, he said, you have some nerve accusing a good doctor of what you're accusing him of. And then he hung up the phone on me.
Okay.
It sounds like they're circling the wagons there, Mark.
So how long was this conversation with the medical examiner?
Not very long.
Like 20 seconds?
I would say maybe a minute at most.
But he made it quite clear that
clearly.
he felt you were lying or filing a false report.
Well, absolutely. I guess you could say he felt I was lying.
He felt you filed a false report and that you were
The
unfairly accusing this doctor of doing something
exactly.
wrong. Okay.
Exactly.
So there's no doubt in your mind that he was saying, we don't believe you, we think you've made this up, the doctor did nothing wrong.
Doctor wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
That's what he told me.
This is very disturbing.
It is.
And I'm going to tell you, Mike, are there other people that have similar circumstances?
Absolutely. I've talked to about a dozen of them.
And is there any group that actually is looking into this on as a where a team of people can actually get more done?
Yes, we are. We have taken it on. I, myself, and two other people whose loved one was.
Do you have an organization? What's the name of that?
It's called Stop Hospital Euthanasia.
And do you have a website or something like that?
We are building a website right now, and we're also creating a newsletter.
Okay.
We've done a video.
And it's called, what's it called again?
Stop Hospital Euthanasia.
Okay. Is that going to be the name? StopHospitalEuthanasia.com? Did you get that?
Yes,
moniker?
we did. We've got the website secured. We got the names secured, so we've got those set up.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Mike, I really appreciate you coming in tonight to talk about this. This is a subject that is very, very dramatic and actually a little bit scary for all of us because we don't know whether or not we're going to be in that position at some point. And thank you for coming in.
Thanks for coming
And
in.
I want to thank everyone that's here on Law Talk. This is a very somber night, and listening to this should bring something to all of us.
Well, thanks for coming on, telling your story.